Hi there, I hope that you're doing well. You join me on this Tuesday morning for another episode of my knitting podcast. I think it's been maybe a little over a month since I filmed the last one, and I have quite a lot to share. October was a really busy month university-wise for me, but I had a couple of projects that I was very inspired by, and also it was Socktober, so I had some really fun sock knitting plans that I've been working my way through. I feel like I would have liked to do more sock knitting during the month of October, and I've ended up doing a lot more other things. Like I made this vest, I finished another jumper, I've been working on other garments as well. But I do have one really special pair of socks that I've just finished blocking, and a couple of other bits that I made a little bit of progress on. So, with that being said, I am wearing one of my knit objects, but before I show you that, I wanted to give you an update on my jacket number 2. This is a pattern by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and it's one that I think was a finished object in the last episode, but at that time I hadn't yet put buttons on it. I have now found buttons for it, and I thought I would just show you what they've ended up looking like. I think they look really nice. I just went for very plain, simple round buttons, and I did that thing where you create a little bit of a gap between where the button is sewn and the actual button itself by wrapping the yarn around it a bunch of times, so that way when you slide the button into the buttonhole, there's space for the button band to fit. And I think the button band doesn't pull or anything, it looks quite neat when it's worn, so I'm very happy with that, and I just thought I would give you a little update on that since it was technically a finished object, but you know, I've added a little bit to it still. With that being said, I guess I can talk about what I'm wearing. I will insert a couple of pictures that I took this morning because I think you can see it a lot more clearly there compared to on camera because I'm wearing all black, but I started and finished my Obsidian Slipover by Knitting Series, or I believe her name is Sofia Scotford. I have been wanting to knit this vest since the pattern came out, I think maybe earlier this year in maybe January, February, or late last year. It's just a really polished, simple vest with a lovely mohair bow detail at the front. And I know maybe bows have been quite trendy in the last year or so, but I found that it is something that I've been enjoying adding to my wardrobe. You may remember from last episode, and I will talk about it later as well, my Christmas jumper has bows on it. And I just think I wear a lot of black, but my style I feel like is quite frilly and girly still. I like a lot of lace and I like ruffles and things like that. And bows have been a really nice addition to that too. And I think the mohair really adds to the vibe of it as well. And so I've been wanting to knit this for a while, but I've never really worn vests. Maybe when I was a child, but not really since I've started dressing myself, I suppose. And I thought it would be an interesting one to start with. It's knit on quite large needles. It knit up really quickly. It's stockinette, other than like the double knit edges and the bow. Most of it's quite quick, and so it knit up in about, I think it took me 10 days from like starting to blocking, and I thought it would be a nice way to try out this type of garment, and then I can see if I wear it, and if I do, I can maybe explore more intricate and time-consuming patterns. I do think I will. I've worn it once. I wore it yesterday because it was blocking. It was drying still before then, but I loved it, and I think it would be a really nice like category of garments to add a bit more of in my wardrobe, because what happens is this year we're in quite warm lecture rooms as opposed to last year. Last year we had a bunch of lectures in really cold rooms, and so I was wearing my thick jumpers a lot. I don't think that will be as much of a case this year. I will still get to wear them, of course, but I don't think vests would be a bad idea. I can wear my warm jacket and be warm while I'm outside, but not melt when I'm actually inside. And so I'm really curious to maybe look up some cable vest patterns. If you have a favorite, let me know. In any case, this one was a really lovely pattern. I found it very clearly explained. I think the way that it walks you through how to do all of the double knitting as well was very clear. Around the front here, there's a very small amount of double knitting to make the edge of the v-neck really polished, and you work the double knitting on the two sides top down, and so on one of the two sides you're kind of doing it the opposite way that you normally would, because you always just go one way when doing a button band around like a cardigan, and I don't know if I'd ever done that before, but I found that very clearly explained. And everything else, like the increases, the shaping, it's got a lovely pearl detail across the shoulder, I think, to really like define the shoulder slope, which I hadn't noticed from the pictures, but I think it looks really nice. I like the folded hem at the bottom. I thought that was a nice finishing as well. I like ribbing for jumpers and stuff, but I find that if you're doing double knitting on something, it's really nicely when that's paired with like folded hems. I did that for my like my polo neck t-shirt that I made over the summer, and I really like that. So I'm very happy with the result of this one. I think in terms of fit as well, it's not too oversized, which I was a bit afraid it might be at first, but I think it's just the perfect fit. It's got a little bit of positive ease. The shoulders kind of fit quite nicely, just like across the top of my shoulders. It doesn't really have much of a drop on me, but I did check my gauge, I believe it's correct, and I knit the smallest size. I don't remember though if the size I picked was the one I was meant to knit or if I sized down, so I will maybe add a detail of that on screen. I think I might have been in between sizes and I sized down, or the size one was actually like my correct size. In any case, I think the fit is really nice. I did make this one a little bit longer. Normally, with like my jumpers and everything, I tend to crop them a bit so I can wear them outside of my trousers, but this one I wanted to wear tucked in, and I think that's a really cute look, and so I did knit it to the recommended pattern length, and that worked great. In terms of the yarn, I used some like frogged yarn that I frogged from a previous project, which is the Laine du Nord Vasto. It's 100% wool. It is superwash, and I didn't really enjoy working with it a lot the first time round, but I just think I was working it at too loose of a gauge, and I never quite liked the finished result of the skirt that I made that first time around. It just didn't fit how I had envisioned it to, and so I'm really glad that I frogged it, and I've been wanting to frog it and use it to make this vest for a while. I did have to go back and pick up some more yarn for it. They did still have it at my local yarn store. I don't think the dye lots are the same, but I don't have the like the ball bands from the old yarn that I had, so I couldn't really compare. In any case, I did do a little bit of helical knitting kind of halfway through the body, I guess, to blend in the new yarn. I ended up buying 2 new skeins, and I used maybe like 1 1/3 of what I bought. But I'm glad that I did that, and I was able to make it to full length and to really get it to fit how I wanted. And I didn't have any dye lot issues in the end. Like, I don't know if the blending helped, I'm sure it did, but they did still look quite similar anyways. So that's it for the main yarn, and I didn't hold it with a mohair. I think the pattern recommends the Sesia tweed to be held with a mohair. I can't remember if it's the Aran tweed or the regular tweed. So technically you're meant to hold like a strand of your main yarn together with a strand of mohair, and then you switch out your main yarn for another strand of mohair for the bow. I just switched my main yarn for 2 strands of mohair, and that was it. And the mohair is the Sesia Vivienne. Both of these are in the colourway black. Very simple. I did really enjoy working with these this time around as well. I've liked the mohair before, I've used it over the summer, but I enjoyed working with this wool a lot better this time around. I think it was quite a good choice for this project. I like that it has a little bit of structure, and it's not too drapey. I don't know if I would have liked that for a project like this. So this was certainly a big success. Next up, I have 2 finished pairs of socks, but I'm sure you're all here to see the big finished project, and so I am going to talk about it. My Northern Augustins number 4, my festive jumper for the year, is all finished. I did talk about it a little bit last time. I think at that point I'd maybe just done the short rows. I don't know if I'd split for body and sleeves yet, but I was maybe like just under the yoke. The short rows are not in the pattern, it's one of the modifications I did, but I guess we can go like top down and run you through all of the modifications I did. This is a pattern by Augustins DK. She has also, or I think she's about to release like an updated version of it as her new Christmas jumper. It's maintained like the bow design, but the top is different, I think. I really like this one though, and I'm very happy that this was my choice for this year. I've been dreaming about it since last January. So it's a round yoke, top down knit jumper with folded over collar, and also all of the hems are folded over, so the cuffs and the bottom hem of the body. The way that she has you do the folded hems, I think, has you start with Judy's Magic cast on, the type of cast on where you cast on 2 different needles, and so then when you go to fold it down you have all of your live stitches to knit it together with already on a different set of needles. That just felt like a lot of effort for something I could do really neatly in a much simpler way personally, and so I just did a folded collar and folded hems the way that I normally would. I think for the collar I just did a normal long tail cast on. I didn't even do like a stretchy cast on or anything, and it's perfectly fine. And then I knit the amount that it told me to and folded it down and knit my live stitches together with the cast on edge. Another thing I did that I don't think is recommended in the pattern is, because the collar and all of the folded edges are ribbed, I did 3 rows of double knitting to encourage the collar to fold. So I did 2 rows on my knit side and 1 row on my purl side, and that kind of encourages the fabric to fold. Actually, interestingly enough, I will talk more about this later, but I'm knitting a petite knit pattern as well. That's currently a work in progress, and I know that like this kind of technique for folded collars is very typical of her patterns, but this is the first one that I've encountered it in personally, and I thought the way that she did a folded collar was the way that I did it in this case, but actually I'm knitting the Celeste sweater, and the way that she has you do it for that is you do 3 rows on the knit side and you don't do any rows on the purl side. But I find I kind of compared the two. I like this method better. I think doing 2 rows on one side and 1 on the other gives you a neater result, to be honest, and so I will stick to doing it this way. After that, I knit the yoke. That is just all charted, it's all very clear, the increases and all. I do think I prefer the way I've done increases for other colour work yokes, where you do a yarn over and then you knit that through the back loop on the next row, as opposed to, I think I did make one left for this one. I think they're a little bit more obvious, but it might also just be because I went for a very high contrast yoke, and obviously on the inside there's like all of the red contrast colour behind the white yarn, and so my white fabric is not particularly dense, and so it does kind of show through a little bit to the front, but I don't think it's you know, a big issue. I don't have a problem with it at all. I think I mentioned last time I did ladder back jacquard for this top section, and I will remember this time to link the video I used for that as well in the description. And then I did add short rows to raise the back neck a little bit. I added those right after finishing the colourwork yoke, but before splitting for body and sleeves. I've done that when I did my Celeste sweater that I made for myself. I'm now knitting the Celeste sweater man as a gift knit. But that pattern does have you add short rows below the colourwork yoke, and I find that that fits me really well, and it's another quite high neck jumper. And with something so high neck that I'm knitting in a fairly rustic wool, though not as rustic, but it's certainly not as scratchy as I thought it would be. It still feels nice and rusty and it's got a lot of character, but it's not scratchy at all. But I will talk about the yarn in a second. Because of that, I didn't want it to be anything that would kind of pull or feel too tight around my neck, and so I think adding short rows worked really well. And I've written down the details for how I did it on my Ravelry project page, which again, all of the details, all of the yarn, everything is always linked in the description. And then after that, I split for body and sleeves, and then I just knit the sleeves to, I don't know if I knit them to the recommended length really, I never kind of checked for sleeves I just try it on and see how I feel about it. I did add, I think, 5 rounds of decreases across the sleeve. I was doing them every 20 rows, and then I decreased to the stitch count that, and then before starting the cuff, the pattern has you decrease to a certain number of stitches, and I decreased to that same amount of stitches, but obviously because I'd already worked a few decreases before, I had fewer to work just before the cuff. So it maybe gives less of a balloon shape, but I still feel like they're quite wide, and I like the way that they fit. And then again, I just did the folded cuff, and I knitted down while binding off, and I think that gives a really neat result. Same thing for the body. I did crop it. I certainly cropped this one. I didn't want it to be too long, especially because of the folded hem. I felt like if it were to be too long, it probably would have ended up feeling a bit too bulky for what I wanted, and I'm really happy that I went with this, and I really like the fit. I think blocking certainly helped. I blocked this in like cold water with like 2 color catchers to make sure the red wouldn't bleed too much into the white, and I think, you know, we're safe enough. But it really helped the colorwork relax and the sleeves grow a bit and the body to grow a bit, and I think the fit is just perfect. In terms of the yarn, actually I should have probably pulled it out of my yarn stash. Give me a second, I will get it out so I can show you. Okay, I used 3 different yarns for this project. I had 2 different yarns for my main colour and then 1 for my contrast colour, which I did hold double. So this one is the Fonty BB Merinos. The colourway is 828. It's a really nice, like, true red, I think, that I don't feel it doesn't lean too pink or too orange. It just feels like quite a nice true red, to be honest, and I really like it, and it's exactly what I wanted for this. And then for my main colour, I held a strand of Istex Plotulopi. I think this is the colourway white, and then a strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the colourway limestone. I wanted a little bit of a cooler, more grey toned mohair to make this slightly cream yarn lean a bit cooler, or like less yellow, I suppose. And I'm really happy with how it worked out. I think the final fabric is a really lovely colour. It doesn't look too mild, it just kind of tones it down a little bit and makes it a bit more neutral, and I'm really happy with that. I also think working the unspun together with a strand of mohair worked so well. It made working with the unspun a lot easier, especially for things like casting on and binding off, where it's always a bit more fiddly and you risk breaking the yarn a little bit more, but also just with the colour work and everything, or where you have to do magic loop. I did magic loop for the collar and the sleeves and all of that. I find doing magic loop with unspun yarn quite difficult. I get a lot of ladders, you end up maybe having to do travelling loop. It's all more complicated than it necessarily needs to be, so I really liked this combination of yarns specifically, and I think if I were to work with an unspun again, I might try to either hold a double or again hold it with another strand maybe of mohair, or like, I know I've never tried it before, but I know like Sesia has some really fine alpaca strands that are alternatives to mohair that I am looking forward to trying at some point. So that's kind of my opinion on that. So I'm really happy with my choice with that, and I would certainly recommend it. I like the finished fabric a lot. I actually don't find it scratchy at all. If you ever worked with the Istex Lopi, it's nowhere near as scratchy. I do find the Lopi quite itchy. I don't think I could wear like a high neck jumper knit in Lopi at all. This one, completely fine, no issue at all. So I'm really happy with that, and I would certainly recommend it. And I like that it still maintains like a bit more of a rustic quality without, you know, without it being difficult to wear at all. So that's it for my festive jumper. And in case you've missed it, I was knitting this as part of a knit along, and I have now another project to knit as part of this knit along. I am co-hosting a Christmas pullover cowl together with Flaminia from Knitting Flam. She also has a YouTube channel. She makes lovely patterns as well. She started designing this year. I will talk more about that later as well. But this is my first finished object for the cowl, and it was like my own Christmas jumper, and now I'm working on a gift knit for my best friend. That will be sort of my main project for the cowl, really. But because I know that that's going to be a bit of a longer project, I wanted to get mine out of the way first. And I will take this occasion to say thank you to anyone that has joined the knit along already. It's been so lovely to see everyone's projects kind of start and progress and everyone choosing their yarn. We are hosting it until the 25th of December, so you've still got time to join. We've had a few new people join just this week, and it, you know, whips are welcome. You don't have to finish in time for Christmas if you can't make it. That's completely fine. We're all just kind of keeping each other company and keeping each other inspired and like giving each other advice. So you're welcome to join that. I will leave the invite link for the group chat in the description as well. With that, I think we can move on to socks. I hope there are other people that were as excited about Socktober as I was, and I would love to know if you've knit any pairs of socks this month, what you made, what yarn you used. If you have any patterns to recommend, I'm always happy to hear about it. Really quickly, I will mention a pair that I've shown you before. I don't know if I've shown them only last time or if I've shown them a couple of times before, but I really wanted to knit myself a pair of shorty red ribbed socks, and I picked up some yarn for this when I was in Paris. I got some Filcolana Arvetta. I will put the colorway in the description because I can't remember the number, and I used up all of the yarn. I have maybe like 3 grams left over. So I'm just really happy with these, to be honest. What do I have to say about them? They're self-drafted. They're just like a pair of vanilla socks. There's 63 stitches on 2.25mm needles, 2x1 rib, and then I did my regular heel flap and gusset. I did anatomical toes for these ones, which I had never done before. Let's see if I can show you. So instead of being like your regular wedge toe, it kind of leans more towards one side, and I quite like that. I will say, in terms of the yarn, I never knit a pair of Merino yarn socks, and this was my first one. They definitely pill a lot more than my other like non-Merino sock yarns, but I find that they've worn quite well so far. They look quite good in shoes, they feel comfortable, they've not felted particularly like more than any of my other socks. They just pill more, so I'm careful to like de-peel them every couple of wears really, but other than that I'm quite happy with them. And I did manage to get a full set of like shorties with 50 grams of yarn, so that was very nice. But really there's not much to say about them because they're just like vanilla socks really. The really exciting pair of socks though is this one. These are the Augustins cables number 2. It's another pattern by Augustins DK. I knew I had to knit this when I saw Jessica from Those Twins Who Knit made them at some point this year. I think she knit them in like a light cream or beige sort of colour. I went for a different hand-dyed yarn. This is one of the Wool & Twine Fibre Studio Ovis sock colorways. It's a colorway Oxalis, and it's this really lovely sort of, I don't know, reddish tone. Like, I feel like it's pulling a bit cooler on camera, but it is quite orangey, I think. It's quite warm and I really like it. I love the way that these turn out. Where do I even start? I did modify them quite a bit, so I actually have a lot to say, but I just think they are so impressive. They're so cool. They were so much fun to work on. It's a very like potato chippy type of pattern because it's all charted and you just keep wanting to do one repeat after the other. And it's not a particularly difficult repeat either. It's got a lot of different elements, but they're all quite simple. Like, there's only one real cable, and then there's, I can never remember what this type of stitch is called. Like this type of stitch where you have to put your stitches on a cable needle and wrap the yarn around them and then put them back on your regular needle. It's the one from the Jenny jacket by Petite Knit, but I don't know what it's called. In any case, I always thought it would be more complicated to do. It really wasn't. So again, kind of let's go top down and walk you through all of the modifications. They are knit top down, which is really nice because a lot of the cable patterns that I've been looking at for socks are all bottom up, or like toe up, and I don't want to do that. So this was really nice for me. They do have a folded cuff, which I'd never done for a sock before. It feels so fancy and luxurious. I love it. I feel I may have been converted to folded cuffs. It does take quite a bit longer to do, but it just looks so lovely, and then you knit it down and like you knit down your live stitches with a cast on edge to fold it down. I basically did the same thing as I did for the collar of my Northern Augustins done before. Again, I did the 3 rows of double knitting to encourage it to fold because I think it would just look neater. And then the leg is all charted, and it's got so many beautiful different elements. There's like a lace sort of stitch pattern down the back, and then you have a regular cable, a faux cable, and then this section in the middle, and then it repeats on the other side. Again, so fun, so engaging, just the perfect amount of intricate and like, yeah, just engaging and potato chippy without it getting like boring and overly complicated. However, the pattern is meant to continue all the way across the sole of the foot as well, and because of that you're meant to do a short row heel. I did not want to do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't particularly like knitting short row heels. I much prefer the experience of a heel flap and gusset. I also wear my socks in boots a lot, and especially for like a taller pair of socks, I really wanted to be able to wear it in boots. And so I always just trust a reinforced slip stitch heel flap more. And especially with this type of yarn, this is 100% wool sock yarn. It's got no nylon in it. I do think at some point I might have to reinforce the heel flap. I haven't worn these in boots yet. They are still like a tiny bit damp from blocking yesterday morning, but I will see how they wear in boots and then decide if I need to reinforce them. The only other pair of socks that I've knit in this yarn before, though in a different colorway, is a pair of Poet socks by Sara, and I only wear those at home. So I don't really have much of a comparison there, but we'll see kind of how they wear. And also on a similar note, I really like the idea of carrying the cable pattern across the bottom of the foot, or kind of the lace pattern. But again, for something that I'm going to wear in boots and walk a lot in, I felt like that might get a bit uncomfortable, and I will just kind of keep it in mind, pin it to the back of my brain, and maybe use it for an at-home pair of socks, but not really for an everyday sort of thing. I did also do an anatomical toe for these ones, same as my other red socks. I still don't know how I feel about this. Technically, an anatomical toe does fit the shape of my foot better. Practically, however, I don't know that I love it, because if I'm in a rush in the morning trying to get my socks on and my shoes on, I don't really want to be trying to figure out which is the left and which is the right and putting on the wrong one and losing my bus because of that, which has happened. So I don't know. I think I might just stick with a regular wedge toe going forward still, but it was a fun experiment. And I think that's mostly it about the modifications I made. The only other thing I did differently was, again, because it's a nylon free sock yarn, the pattern is meant to be knitted on 2.5mm needles, but I wanted to knit it on 2.25 to get a bit of a denser fabric. I probably would have done it regardless of the yarn, to be honest. I just like to knit my socks on 2.25mm needles. I find they wear better. But in order to do that, I did have to go up a couple of pattern sizes actually. One really good thing about this cabled sock pattern is it's got a lot of different sizes. I love cable socks, but a lot of them, they only have like one size, and it's like 60 stitches on 2.5mm needles, and that doesn't always work for me, and I'm sure it doesn't work for everyone all of the time. I really like that this one has a lot of different sizes. I think the only thing that differs between them is like the back section. It might change in the number of like purl stitches you've got here. So normally I would have knit like a size 37 European. I knit the 43 to 44. It fits perfectly. So I'm really happy with these, and I can't wait for them to be fully dry and for me to be able to wear them, hopefully tomorrow. So that's it about finished objects. I will now move on to my whips. I suppose we can carry on with the socks. This is another one that you have seen before, but I actually just picked it back up yesterday evening because I finished my cable socks the other day, and then I wanted to finish these next. I'm trying to kind of reduce my number of whips a little bit, especially because I want to cast on new things, but I didn't want to cast on new things before finishing things. So these are the oodi socks. This is a pattern by Sara. It's a free pattern that I think she wrote in collaboration with Novita, the yarn brand. And funnily enough, I am actually using a Novita yarn for that. I'm using the Novita Viola. This is the colorway 10, and it's an 80-20 wool nylon blend. This feels like a really sturdy sock yarn, and I'm really curious to see how this wears in boots, to be honest. That's also part of the reason why I have stuck to knitting these on 2.5mm needles. The other reason is that I did try to modify and knit on 2.25, it all went wrong. I went back and I'm now following the pattern kind of as written. The only thing I've done differently, I think, is I did 1 fewer repeats of the chart on the leg. So I think you're meant to do 4 repeats, I only did 3. But you can see it's got this really lovely like floral cable motif that I'd never done before. I think it looks so good. And I knit the first sock when I was on holiday at the seaside in August, and then I just put it aside, and so yesterday I did pick it back up and I've started working on the leg again. So I've done 2 full repeats so far. I'm hoping to like finish the leg and then maybe do the heel flap this afternoon. I find 2.5mm needle socks work up so much faster, but it's not generally my preference, but I think it will be okay with this yarn specifically. Other than that, usual heel flap and gusset, and then just a regular wedge toe, so nothing special about that. But I think these are going to look so nice, and these feel like the coziest autumn socks. I love them. I can't wait for them to be done. Next up, I have my other festive jumper that I was mentioning. So I promised at the beginning of the year that I would knit a jumper, specifically a Celeste sweater man, for my best friend for Christmas. He saw my own Celeste sweater that I knit for myself last year and said that he would really like one, and I was like, I would be happy to knit you one, and so here we are. We sat down, we picked the colours together. I am knitting this in a combination of knitting for olive heavy merino and regular merino. So I think this is Dusty Petroleum Blue, this is the heavy merino. Dusty Duff Blue, or just regular Duff Blue, is also heavy merino, as well as Ice Blue. And then my main colour, which is Snowflake, is the regular merino held double, and I'm doing the same for the grey, which is pearl grey. And I've now gotten everything incredibly tangled, and that will be fun for me to untangle later. So we picked the colours together, and I've started working on the yoke. I obviously already had the pattern for the women's version of the jumper, and I didn't know how different the two would be apart from the collar. I've had a look. They're not really that different. The man's sizing essentially starts 2 sizes up from the women's, so I don't know if the women's starts from an extra small or a double extra small, but the 2 smaller sizes are not, like, don't exist in the men's pattern. Other than that, the stitch counts are the same. The yoke colorwork chart is like 3 rows longer for the men's, and then like the length that you knit it to is a bit different, and the stitch counts when you split for body and sleeves are a bit different. I think you put more stitches in the sleeves than you do in the women's pattern. Realistically, I do think you could just hack it. If you have one, you can knit the other. I would have felt quite comfortable if I had the men's version to do one for myself, but because I don't really have him here with me and I can't get him to try it on, this is also going to be a surprise. Like, he knows I'm making it, he's picked the yarn, but he doesn't want to see photos of it or anything until it's actually finished. So I have him like blocked from my Insta stories and all of that in case I do post about it, but I didn't want to run the risk, to be honest, and so I'm choosing to trust patina with it. So I am kind of part of the way through the yoke so far. I would like your opinion about this, to be honest, and I'm sorry about the clinking of the needles as well, but I've put it on like 2 cables so I can actually show it a bit better, and it can kind of lay a bit more flat. I would like your opinion on this. Does this look too stripy, or do we like it? Because I think in this bottom section, the part that I've not done, or like the last bit that I've just started, the light and the dark colours will be blended in a bit better. But I'm just a bit concerned about this dark stripe down the middle. I don't know if I like it. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. I think in any case, I will finish the colour work and I will have a look at it all together, and then if I really don't like it, I can rip back and fix it. But I would like to just kind of see it all together first. It's a fun colour work pattern to knit anyways, and it doesn't take too long. So I would kind of just rather do it this way. In any case, it's been really fun to work up so far. I think this is a great first colour work project. It seems really intimidating because it's 5 different colours. In reality, the actual colour work is quite simple, because it's all really short floats. Most of it is like 1 stitch or 2 stitches. You don't have to worry about catching your floats at all, and it's a lot easier to maintain even tension. I think petit knit patterns are always very clearly explained. This one is no different, and so I would definitely recommend it. I do feel like the collar is a bit tiny. I was expecting the collar to be a bit thicker, but I guess for a men's jumper it will look fine. I don't know, I hope that will look good. I think for this one I might have done a stretchy cast on though. I don't know if the pattern recommends it, but I do think I did. No, maybe I didn't do a stretchy cast on, I just did a regular long tail cast on, but I cast on quite loosely to make sure it would fit through the head. Other than that, I'm really not planning on like doing any modifications to this. I've got measurements that I'm going to knit it to in terms of like sleeve length and body length and all of that. And I am knitting the smallest size. We did size down compared to what the pattern recommended, because he didn't really want as much positive ease in it, and so hopefully that's all going to fit fine. So that will be one you see more of going forward, and I am knitting that as my main project for the Christmas pullover cowl. I'm waiting for the moment we can both wear our matching jumpers on like Boxing Day and we can get a picture of it, so you can look forward to that. Last but not least, I do have another whip. This has been my knit during we have like a legislation course this year, or like this semester. This has been my knit project for that class, because I don't really have to take notes for it, or like I add some comments to the PowerPoint but not too much, and I find knitting helps me stay concentrated and focused on it, otherwise I just lose it. And so this has been my project for that. It's the Dröm shawl by Coquelicot. I'm knitting this in drops alpaca. The pattern does recommend an alpaca yarn. I believe it's a different one, but it's the exact same meterage. Again, colorway black, what did we expect? And I have made progress since the last time, but it's a bit difficult to show because the needles are a bit too short. In any case, it's growing, like it's relatively long already. I think I have 14 more rows left overall, and then I will get to working on the lace and cable border that runs across the bottom of it. So the way that you work it is, it's a triangular shawl knit all in garter stitch. You increase down the middle and then at the sides. It's a free pattern, by the way, you can have a look at it if you want to. So you kind of just work the triangle of the shawl top down, and then once you're done with that, you work a lace and cable panel kind of this way, running sideways along the bottom of the shawl. And I've been wanting to make this for a while. I thought last year, especially, as I mentioned, we were in quite like cold classrooms, but in general, like the temperature in the classrooms that we're in changes quite a lot, and you may be in a really warm place in the morning and in a cooler place in the afternoon. And so I want to have a really nice like warm shawl that I can keep at the bottom of my backpack, and I can just throw on if I need to, because I'm always doing that with my scarf, but it doesn't really work the same way. So I really wanted a shawl specifically for that, and I think this will be a really nice one for that. It's just taking forever. I don't love knitting garter stitch, I have discovered, and it's like 200 plus stitches at the moment, so it's just maybe like close to 300 really, so it just takes forever to do a single row. But it's nice mindless knitting to do when you're listening to something, so hopefully I get to finish that quite soon, and then I get to actually start the lace cable section. I think that will be a lot of fun. I do really enjoy that. So that's it for my current projects really. In terms of acquisitions, I don't really think I have anything. I bought some extra yarn to finish this jumper, but I don't really think I bought anything else. I am about to place an order. I'm going to get yarn because I am going to be test knitting a pattern for Flaminia from Knitting Flam, who I'm co-hosting the knit along with. She has started a test knit for a v-neck version of her Sandro pullover. It's a really beautiful, really classic cable jumper, and the kind of the round neck version is out already. It came out I think last winter, but she's now been working on a v-neck version, and I am really excited to test knit that for her. It will be my first test knit as well, and for that I'm planning on ordering the, and I will horribly be mispronouncing that, but I think it's the Harbosvensk ull. I will be getting the 2-ply version. I thought I was going to get the 3-ply. As it turns out, that will certainly be too thick. I've seen some people use that for the Dagmar series by Petit Knit and knit that up at like an 18 stitch gauge in a cable pattern. I need closer to a 22 stitch gauge. I think the 2-ply will work really well for that, for what I've seen from other people's project pages. And surprise, surprise, I will be knitting that in black as well. Other than that, I do want to actually make something colourful. I have one leftover ball of Knitting for Olive Merino in the colourway Claret from one of the mixed rib camis that I knit over the summer. Just to be safe, I was buying 3 skeins of yarn to knit a camisole last summer because I never really knit them before. 2 mostly do the trick for me, 2 really are enough, and so I have an extra one that I would really like to make a tiny scarf with. And my plan is to make the daisy chain scarf by Annabelle Williams. It's a really lovely like lace and bubbles triangular tiny scarf, and I think that would be really nice. I did make a similar thing. I made the poet scarf last year using some leftover pigint for my sweater number 29. She's hanging over there on my easel. Actually, let me get it for you. This is what she looks like. I really like the pattern. I loved making this. I would certainly like to make another one. The issue I have with this is that I should have either knit it on a larger needle size or I should have made it bigger, but I was afraid I wouldn't have enough yarn because I was just using up leftover yarn. And it's just not quite big enough to be comfortably worn. And also it's just a bit too like bulky. If I tie it on, it looks nice, but I can only tie it once around the back, and so it doesn't feel very secure. And so what I've been thinking about doing actually, because I do still have a little bit of leftover yarn, is I am thinking about adding maybe like a little bit of an I-cord tie at the back of it, so I can tie it around twice at the back of my neck and I can wear it a bit more securely, because if I have to really like tie it properly, it's just too it's just too small. It ends up being too tight. But I wanted something with a little bit more drape, maybe a little bit bigger, but we'll see really. But I do think it should be a bit bigger from what the measurements and the pattern say. And again, that is another free pattern, or I think it's like a pay what you want pattern, but you can download it for free and have a look if you want. And then my main plan upcoming next are mittens. I have a couple of pairs of mittens that I made last year. I have a pair of white cable mittens, but I really like them. They're nice and fluffy. They're knit in drops alpaca, but I mostly wear black. All of my coats are black. White mittens that leave white fluff all over your clothes are not the best thing ever. So I really want to make myself a pair of black mittens. However, because my idea is to be able to wear them with like my fancy coats, I would like to knit those in a fancy yarn, and I'm hoping to be able to pick up a little bit of Cardiff cashmere at some point and to be able to knit myself a pair of hopefully brioche mittens in that. I've had a look and I have some patterns in mind. But I also want more colourwork mittens. I have seen a pattern for a pair of fingerless colourwork mittens. They're called the Hello Spring Mitts by Monica Anna. And I think those would be really nice. And then I also have a bunch in mind for like non-fingerless mittens. But I think for the use that I make of them, I'm always waiting at bus stops and having to check bus times and all of that, I think fingerless mittens would be really handy. But I'm waiting to finish the colourwork yoke on my Celeste, because then I will be using this pale grey, and if I have any like leftover of the main white colour as well, but especially this one I will be using as a contrast colour for some of those mittens. I did also pick up one skein of the Knitting for Olive recycled wool, or no waste wool I think it's called, to maybe hold with that or with the white or something else. And so this is going to be another one that I use for the mittens. But yeah, I don't know really when I'll be able to start that. I just want to finish up a couple of things first still, and then we'll get started with something else. I think for a while my main priorities will certainly be the Sandor pullover v-neck once the yarn arrives, hopefully soon, and then the Celeste sweater, and then a couple of accessories here and there. I would love to know if you have any recommendations for really nice cable sock patterns that I knit top down or like cuff down. I would love to hear about those, and if you've been knitting anything fun and you would like to share that in the comments, I am all ears about it. And with that, I think I've rambled on for long enough. I will leave you. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and thank you for sticking around. Bye, see you soon.